Let me do a quick introduction. I just saw some people coming. So.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I see we have such a good turnout to come and see here Michael McGerty. I just would like to introduce him. He's here today to talk about some of the experience he had when he traveled to Europe, Germany, and what else? The Middle East. Boy, brave enough. So I'm just going to hand the microphone to Michael. He seems like he's very eager to talk to you, so I'll just give it to him.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Wow, pause pretty quickly. You don't even know what I have to say yet. So, my name is Michael McGerty, as you may have gathered. I'm 14 years old, and I live right here in Lombard. So, and I went to Glen Westlake Middle School. Right now, I'm a freshman in high school. So these odd-looking people you may see around the room that came with me are my great-grandparents over there, and by that I mean that they're great people, not that they're necessarily grandparents. My dad, companion in my world travels with his friend Melody, and my grandma from the other side, who's also a world traveler with her friend. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd also like to thank your wonderful activities director over here, Mr. Carlos Bernal, for hosting me here and setting up everything behind the scenes. You're welcome. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my travels. A few years ago, I started traveling the world with my dad, and since then we've been to the countries of Israel, Jordan, Egypt, England, France, Italy, and Germany. During that time, we've taken over 3,400 pictures. You'll be glad to know that I didn't bring all of them. My goal today is to give you all an overview of all the countries I've been to. So I've worked hard narrowing down that 3,400 to the very best 100, which I have here. I'd first like to talk to you about the countries of England, France, and Italy, which we visited on our Europe trip. And then I'd like to talk in a little more detail about the countries of Israel, Jordan, and Egypt, which we visited when we went to the Middle East. Although I could talk forever about these countries, I figured that I should talk to you guys for no more than an hour. So I've narrowed it down to my very best hour of material and recorded myself to make sure I didn't go over the time limit. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions or if I'm talking too quickly or quietly or anything. Can everyone hear me right now okay? Well, the reason I'm here is both because I love sharing my travel stories and because I want to learn to be a better speaker. So, thank you all for helping me with that. And so, it's kind of, I came here to become a better speaker, so in other words, I like talking, or so I've been told, and to share my travel stories. So I'd like to thank you all for helping me with that. I'm very excited about talking to you guys because this is one of my first real opportunities. And please be nice to me if I'm still learning. Now, any questions before I begin? All right, then let's get started. Ooh, lights. Thanks. So the first city we visited is London. And this over here behind me is sort of the center of power in London, Parliament, sort of like our Congress. And I really like this building. It has kind of the little pointy arches and towers, and it's kind of fun to look at. And also here you can see Big Ben, the famous clock tower. Apparently there's an earthquake going on right now in this photograph. But over there is the Tower of Records, which is another famous tower where they actually keep paper records from Parliament for hundreds of years, which I thought was interesting, and they still do today. This is me with my guide, John Going. He served as my guide for the historical sites in London, as well as my interpreter for the English language. Because although they speak the same language, they really don't. Here you can see me and my dad in front of Buckingham Palace. You can usually identify me in these pictures because of my blonde hair. This is Buckingham Palace, home of the Queen of England. It's 4 stories high. It has manicured gardens out back, a huge public square in front with crowds come there every once in a while. It's really not a bad place to live. I wouldn't mind living in a place like that. I don't know about you guys. Here, I'm not in this picture, but you could see through this little fence that's meant to prevent people from getting over there. That black building is 10 Downing Street, which is the home of the Prime Minister of England. Stained black with soot behind a giant fence, and occasionally gets attacked by the IRA, so it's really not as nice as the Queen's house. This is New Scotland Yard. And we just found this when we were walking down the street, but we thought it was cool, so we took a picture of it. So, does anybody know what Scotland Yard is?
Yep.
Does anybody tell the group?
Police department.
The FBI.
The British Police Force, yeah. So, it's actually the same one that Sherlock Holmes worked for. And this is the new version, which we thought was interesting to see. Here is me and my dad on the prime meridian of the world. This picture is interesting, and I like this picture because the prime meridian divides the world in 2, so we're actually straddling both the east hemisphere and the west hemisphere right now, which is what makes this picture interesting.
Who's the lady posing in the window?
I really don't know, actually. I see you all recognize this picture.
Yeah.
The next city we visited is Paris, and this is the very iconic Eiffel Tower, the Tour Eiffel. And me in front of it, you can see me not quite giving it scale, it's a lot taller than it looks. And here is me and my dad enjoying the magnificent view from Le Sommet, the 3rd floor of the Eiffel Tower, looking out over Paris. It's fine, you can go on. I really like this picture because although it's not really of anything in particular, we actually took it when we were going down the stairs on the inside of the Eiffel Tower to the bottom. And we took it into the tower. And I like this picture because from the outside, the tower kind of looks light and elegant and airy. And from the inside, you really realize how big it is. It's monstrous in size, and it took quite a bit of planning and work to make it, so I like that. This is an obelisk in the Place de la Concorde in Paris. A real Egyptian obelisk brought from Egypt. Remember that for later in my talk.
We're going to do a test, right? We're going to quiz it.
Yeah, there'll be a test that I hand out later. It's 50 questions, multiple choice. No. So here's the very famous Louvre Museum.
Right.
Famous, there's that glass pyramid in front. And I'm not really a big art person, but I made time for this museum because it is the home of the Mona Lisa. And this picture actually makes it look a lot bigger, but when we were there, it's not necessarily small like you've heard, but it's regular size, but it's on a gigantic wall, and it's completely covered in bulletproof glass. So that makes it an interesting experience. Here is me in front of the Church of Notre Dame du Paris. I heard that somewhere out there. Another very famous church. This time I actually am giving it scale. You can see how big it is. And here is me in front of Le Procope, Café Procope, the oldest cafe in the world. This isn't one of the monuments you hear about a lot, but I like it and I included it because it's been around for so long. Famous people from all generations have hung out there. So Jefferson, Voltaire, and Napoleon all spent time here. And Voltaire, I think this particular story is interesting. Voltaire is reported to have drank 26 cups of coffee a day there. So it's no wonder he was getting all those revolutionary ideas in his head.
Give you a better mic. Let's turn that
Is this one any better? Everyone? Ah, good.
It's a lot more clean.
Yeah. I really like this picture because I really like this picture because we're not really great photographers. We're the ones running around with the little point-click cameras. But I'm proud of this particular picture because it kind of looks like a postcard. And that's because we took it from the 3rd floor of the Eiffel Tower down at the Arc de Triomphe. The magnificent, imposing, and fear-inducing Palace of Versailles, home of Louis XIV, the Sun King. The equally imposing and fear-inducing lines in front of Versailles. So now we leave Paris and we go to the 3rd city we visited, which is Nice. And Nice is it's in the south of France on the Côte d'Azur. And it's sort of the party vacation spot for France, where all the French businessmen and occasionally Russian mobsters go, but so there wasn't too much history there, and we kind of traveled to see history. So when we got there wasn't too much to see, but we were pretty tired after 5 days of touring, and we were getting up before dawn and getting back before dark and running from site to site. We were literally running at some points. You can imagine that one of us here liked that more than the other one. So when we got to Nice, we were very tired. So the first day, it's possible that I slept until like 12:30 in the afternoon. There you can see my dad reminding me that the morning is gone. This is a car. It's actually a very nice car. It personifies all the wealth of Nice from the Russian mobsters. So then we leave Nice and we go into Italy. And the first city we visited in Italy is Venice. Venice is a water city, it's an island, and it's crisscrossed by canals. So they sort of use canals like we use our roads. So then the first thing you have to understand about Venice is that Venice loves boats. They have boats for everything. Here is one of the more famous, the gondola, the sort of romantic boat, but also very famous. Here is actually a vaporetti, which is a motorized bus boat. So it's actually the Venetian public transit system. So you could hop on at one station and then go and then hop off at another. So it's actually kind of cool. This is a police boat. They'll pull you over and give you a ticket if you go over the speed boating limit. Just kidding. This is a fireboat, Vigili del Fuoco. They apparently they have fires in cities that are completely covered by water, but hey. And this is a garbage boat. The Venetians produce garbage too, and it has to go somewhere.
Where do they dump it?
Water.
I imagine they bring it to the mainland, but I didn't see where exactly it went. So actually, is everyone with me so far? Have I made everything clear? With any questions? Okay. Excellent. So actually before we went to Venice, I got an opportunity to do a project on whatever I wanted. So for school, and so I decided to do it on Venice since I knew we were going there, and specifically on the Doge of Venice, who is the sort of elected ruler when Venice was a city-state. So then I spent around 3 months researching the Doge before I went to Venice and learning all the fantastic Venetian history. So then it was really cool when I went there to actually see the real places where the Doge was and the real Venetian history. So here behind me you could see this sort of pink rectangular building is the Doge's palace, where the Doge lived. Here is the grand staircase inside the Doge's palace where he received his visitors. And since I had learned all this about the Doge, and here I was where the Doge was, I decided to be the Doge. So I was. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that's the second one. That's my primary Doge pose at the top of that staircase, receiving my visitors. Here's me receiving my visitors in a more friendly manner. The key is the chin. This is the Bridge of Sighs, and the story behind it is that the Doge's prisoners would cross from the Doge's palace over here. It's a bright light. From the Doge's palace over here to the Doge's prisons over here, where you don't want to be. And when they crossed this little bridge, they would look out at last upon the beauties of the world and sigh, knowing they would not see freedom again. This is the Bridge of Sighs in real life, completely covered by billboards. I was very angry. I just included this picture because I look handsome. This is the closest you get to a traffic jam in Venice, a gondola jam.
No traffic lights.
No, they don't really. At the intersections, you just sort of go.
Those mirrors to see who's coming.
Yeah, there's lots of collisions. Here's me in front of the Rialto Bridge, another very famous Venetian bridge over the Grand Canal, which is the main canal in Venice. Since Venice is an island city, they eat quite a bit of seafood because they're surrounded by water. So then one of the real things that expresses the spirit of Venice and the essence of Venice is the fish market. So when we were exploring the fish market, we found this, and this is actually a box of snails. That's what those are, they're little snails. But the one thing the Venetians didn't anticipate about the snails is that they would try to escape. I don't know if you can see, but that guy is going over the side there. He's going for freedom. He's a smart one. Next thing you have to know about Venice is that it floods. And when it floods, it floods. The public squares are covered, and you have to chomp around in those little rubber boots like those ladies are doing, unless you're me and you just chomp around anyway in regular shoes. But most tourists were actually annoyed when this happens, but I consider myself lucky to have been there at a time of flood, because that's really the essence of Venice. Like I said, I got to see the real Venice underwater. Here is me in between the four horses of St. Mark. You can only see two there, but there's two on the other side, looking out over the St. Mark Square, theoretically where the Doge addressed the crowds. And so this is on top of St. Mark's Basilica, which is, this is on top of St. Mark's Basilica, where St. Mark the Evangelist and the Gospel writer is actually buried after they stole his body, which is another interesting story. But the moral of this story is that you're not supposed to cross those little railings that they put out there, here. And if you do, an Italian guard will come out and yell at you for a long time in Italian. That was very confusing, but I remember that vividly. So the next city in Italy we visited, and the second to last in Europe, is Florence. And you could immediately tell the difference between Florence and Venice because of the color scheme. In Venice they use kind of blues and pinks and light colors, and in Florence they go with the yellows and the browns and the reds and the more earthy colors. This is the main river of Florence, the Arno. Here's me. I'm wearing a dark jacket, so it's a little hard to see. But me in front of the fantastic Duomo Cathedral, one of my favorite monuments in the world for just looking at. And in front of here you can see this octagonal building is the baptistry. Here we are inside the baptistry looking up at the ceiling and the fantastic medieval paintings they have up there. And this one is actually the Last Judgment. So here's Jesus on the last day determining who will go to heaven on that side and hell on this side. And hell is a place you don't want to go. I didn't know if you could see, but that demon has a guy in his mouth.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. So here we are at the Museo Galileo, another famous museum in Florence. It's named after the famous astronomer. And the most interesting thing they actually have in their collection is 2 of Galileo's fingers. They have 2 of Galileo's fingers. He's not buried there, but they just have 2 of his fingers for some reason. And I don't really know how they got those, but my theory is that some of his followers got a little overzealous when they were carrying him to the grave and took one as a souvenir. And somehow they found their way into the hands of the museum. Here is me petting the nose of the Florentine pig, which is supposed to give you luck and ensure that you will return to Florence again in your life, which I intend to. Catching some sleep on the train. Rome. Rome is busy. It's a real city. There's traffic like crazy, and the streets are just totally congested. And the cars also drive pretty fast. Those Italians, they're crazy drivers. No offense if any of you are Italian. I'm Irish. You can make fun of me too. So
The nerve.
There you go. No wonder he likes it tough.
So anyway, they drive very fast. So we really didn't know how we were going to cross the streets. We were out of our depth in the pool.
Did you notice they also drive on the sidewalk? The Italian drivers in Italy?
I have not noticed that, actually. I might not be here to talk to you if I had. I didn't know when that happened. But so anyway, these cars drive very fast. So luckily we had our guide, Marta, and she was a native Italian, and her method for crossing streets is she would put out her arm like this and step right out into the traffic, and the cars would be swerving to a halt, and they'd be screeching around her, and but she remained totally calm and got across, and then we followed her thinking that we were going to die, but we didn't, as clearly evidenced by me being here. And so we actually got across all the streets okay. St. Peter's Basilica, very recognizable. Head church of the Catholic faith, as well as residence of the head of the Catholic faith, the Pope. He lives in a sort of house off to the side that you can't see in this picture. The lines in front of St. Peter's. I don't know if you notice a theme here. Here we are inside St. Peter's Basilica with the magnificent carved altar that's at the center of the church. And actually, if you go to the center of that altar and straight down and a little over to the side, that's actually where St. Peter is buried according to tradition. So it's kind of cool that they actually built the church on top of St. Peter, the companion of Jesus. Here I am with my guide Marta that I mentioned before. Unfortunately, this is the best picture I could get for the Sistine Chapel because they don't let you take pictures in there. But it was magnificent inside. Now we leave the modern and Christian part of Rome and go back into the Roman part of Rome. And so this is the ancient Roman Forum, the sort of hubbub business center of ancient Rome where anything that was happening happened. Here we are at the Colosseum. It's home of the gladiator duels and very iconic monument. And here you can see that they have built a highway right around the outside of it. I mentioned Italians. So here we are inside the Colosseum. You can see down there's a bit of a reconstructed floor. And actually, the floor from the Roman days has since worn away. And so you could see the tunnels underneath, which I thought was pretty cool. That it's not just floor, it's actually there's tunnels underneath that you could transport gladiators and animals and really whatever you want across. I like these pictures. These are obelisks. This is interesting to me. I showed you one in the Place de la Concorde. But these are obelisks in Rome. And there are actually more Egyptian obelisks carved in Egypt in Rome now than there are in Egypt, which is just interesting to me quite a bit. Here's another obelisk you can see in front of the Cathedral of St. Peter's. And here's one in front of the Pantheon. This is a pigeon. It's actually a very special pigeon. So the story behind this picture is that we were it was our last day in Rome and our last day in Europe, and we were trying to find the Cathedral of San Giovanni in Laterano, which is very important, and home of the Holy Stairs, which unfortunately I didn't have time to talk about. But we were lost. We thought we could navigate the city on our own, and we were wrong. So here we are in the back streets of Rome with a whole bunch of Italian people, and trying to turn the little map and find out where we are, and we have really no idea. So we're walking down the back streets of Rome, and here we see this bird. And this bird is just in someone's backyard or something or another. And you can see that it's standing on top of the water fountain, and there's water pouring out there. There it is, drinking out of the water fountain. It's drinking out of the water fountain. I just thought this was like mind-boggling. There's the bird, and it's standing on the fountain, and then it ducks down, and it starts drinking out of the water with its beak. And I didn't know pigeons could do that, so we sat and watched it for like 20 minutes, which I know is a little sad, but it was very interesting. And then sadly our Europe adventure had to come to a close, and we came back to America. Are there any questions before I move on to the Middle East? Have I been clear on everything?
What's the temperature about where you are walking?
Where I am here, it's actually the same as it is over there. I'm just kidding. What? Where?
Yeah, you didn't mention a warmth or cold.
In Rome it's warm. In London it's middle. It's kind of like temperature here. And in Paris it's warmer than London, farther south. And most people argue nicer in terms of weather, but I really don't care. So.
Well,
Yep.
amid your conversation, you mentioned France,
France.
Germany, and a
Germany.
couple of other countries. But you didn't mention them in the ones you just mentioned on the screen, mostly Italy.
The ones I mentioned so far are England, France, and Italy. And those are three of the countries, and I'm going to move on to the other three now and talk in a little more detail about them.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, here we are in the Middle East, a very fascinating place. And the first country we visited in the Middle East is Israel. And Israel is a great place. All three countries are fantastic places with fantastic history. But the first one we visited is Israel. So here I am in my bathing suit and sunglasses, very stylish, but in front of this sign that says negative 422. And that stands for negative 422 meters, which is the lowest point on Earth.
What do you want?
And the lowest point on Earth is the Dead Sea. And because it's so low, the water goes in there, but it doesn't have any other way to get out except to evaporate. So I thought that was interesting because that's how it ended up so salty, is it just left the salt behind. And then, you know, that salt makes you float. So it's actually 5 or 6 times saltier than the ocean. So it's really interesting. You go in there and it feels like normal water, and then you lay back and it is like laying on a bed. It is unbelievable. It's a surreal experience. That's no magic trick, folks. That's science. It's probably 6 feet of water under me.
So you don't need life jacket.
No.
There you go.
So here I am, laying in a more relaxed pose favored by most people. And here I am in the less traditional Superman pose. Less popular because it risks dunking your face into the water and having your eyes burned for several hours with salt, but it's a great picture.
I had a question, but I'll wait.
You have a question?
Well, it's ironic how they have the what is that, a rope or?
The buoys, yeah.
Yeah, so that you don't pass to the deeper part of the water?
Well, they're fine with you passing to the deeper part of the water, but actually out there is, on the other side of the lake, on the other side of the sea is Jordan, actually. So it's a different country, and they don't really want you going over there because Israel and Jordan haven't always had the friendliest relations.
Right, so it's not so much about drowning, it's more about the
get shot.
It's also about drowning, because if you get salt in your eyes and you're in like 100 feet from shore, then you probably will drown.
Okay.
So anyway, in order to get to the Dead Sea, we had to go through the West Bank. And the West Bank is one of the more controversial and dangerous parts of Israel that you hear about, home of the Palestinians. And this is actually, that snaky thing is the wall, which the Israelis have built to cut off Palestine. And that's very controversial, and you hear about that a lot on the news. So I just thought that was interesting that we actually got to see that, so I included it here. Here is me in front of the Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth. And Nazareth, if you guys can all remember it back to your CCD school, is where Jesus grew up. And so this is the Church of the Annunciation, and it's called that because it is traditionally built over the place where God annunciate to Mary that she would have Jesus. So I just think I think it's very interesting that here in Lombard or in America we build churches just to go to, but here in the Holy Land they're built over real biblical events. Here's me in front of the Sea of Galilee, another very famous biblical location where Jesus walked on water, calmed the storm, and gathered a bunch of his disciples, according to the Bible. And we actually got to eat dinner out here on the Sea of Galilee, on like a sort of deck thing that they built out over the Sea of Galilee. So that was a really cool experience. And in order to get there, we only had to walk past several armed guards and attack dogs, but it was worth it. Here, this is a terrain model of the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights is another region that you hear about a lot on the news, so it interested me, and it was cool that I got the opportunity to actually go up here and sort of explore the Golan Heights and learn about, as well as ancient Israel, about modern Israel and the wars with Syria. Danger mines. We found the sign when we were driving along, showing that this is really a potential war zone. And these aren't the nice kind that dig stuff out of the ground either. They're the kind that blow up. Here's me and my dad in the holy city of Jerusalem, center of the world, arguably. Jerusalem is bar none my favorite place in the entire world that I've ever been to, and probably that I will ever be to. It's an amazing city. And I think this is a really good overview picture of Jerusalem. Here you can see this golden dome as the Dome of the Rock, third holiest Muslim shrine in the world. Over there, those blue domes next to my head are the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the single holiest place in the world for all Christians. And if you go to the Dome of the Rock and you actually go right down, you can't see it in here, but if you go straight down from there, that's actually the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, which is the holiest spot in the world for all Jews. And so if you wonder why there's so much conflict in this part of the world, here you have three religions' holy spots within a stone's throw of each other, all packed into this city. Here is me and my dad in front of the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall. It, as I said, is the holiest spot in the world for all Jews. And they go here to, this is the holiest spot because it's actually the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, which is the big rectangular platform on which the Jewish temple was built. So I think it's actually interesting. There's nothing holy about this wall in itself, but now that the top is controlled by the Muslims, this is the closest that Jews can get to the Holy of Holies, which is, according to tradition, where God's presence rests on earth. Here is me. I'm in a lot of these pictures, I don't know if you noticed. But here is me in front of the Temple Mount, and this is actually a picture taken from the Mount of Olives, which is another loaded word for the Middle East, where lots of things are. And here you can see sort of the rectangular outline of the wall there. That's the Temple Mount. And right here is the Dome of the Rock. And sort of down the side of the Mount of Olives here, all these white boxes are actually Jewish graves. And I think this is interesting. It's actually, the Mount of Olives is, you wouldn't think, because you hear about the Mount of Olives a lot in the Bible, so you wouldn't think that it's where so many Jewish graves are located. But I thought it was interesting that this is actually close to a valley where, according to Jewish tradition, God is going to come to judge the world. And therefore, these people will be the first to be resurrected. It's not going to be Lombard, probably. Here we are on the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount that I showed you before. It's actually really big up close. It's huge. You can see those tiny little people walking around back there. And it's called the Dome of the Rock because if you go in those little doors, and I wish you could go in, I didn't actually get to because they don't let you in nowadays unless you're a Muslim. But if you go in those little doors, you see a huge uncovered rock on the floor. And that rock is, according to tradition, again, I have to say according to tradition because scholars really aren't sure where any of these things actually happened. But this is where Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac, or in Islamic tradition, Ishmael. So, another thing where it's built on top of a real holy site. This rather odd-looking building is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the single holiest place in the world for all Christians. And actually, I think it's interesting that it's not the grandest looking church. I mean, you saw St. Peter's, and this really is nothing compared to St. Peter's in terms of size or architecture. And it's kind of like hemmed in on all sides between the buildings. But this is the holiest spot in the world for all Christians. And that's because it's built over the site of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. So, because it's so holy, I again thought this was interesting, that it's actually too holy to be given to one single denomination. So it's actually divided among 6. So they each have their own little territories of the holy spots inside the church. And then inside the church, if one of the monks actually infringes on the territory of one of the other sects, they'll actually break out into brawls because they're so territorial, which doesn't seem very monkish of them, but you can judge for yourselves. This is me silhouetted. Behind me is the Roman Catholic altar over Golgotha. And Golgotha is Hebrew for the place of the skull. And translated into Latin, that is Calvary. So this is the altar built over the hill of Calvary. So it's right over there, according to Christian tradition, where Jesus of Nazareth hung in agony and died. It's a very holy place, a very somber place. And actually, if you go over there under the altar, like those people are doing, there's a porthole where you could sort of reach your arm in and touch the rock of Golgotha, where the cross was raised, which I did, and it was pretty cool. Here's me in front of this altar. This is very, very holy. This is in the single holiest church, this is the holiest place. So it's for all Christians. This is the tomb of Jesus Christ, where Jesus was, according to the Bible, laid in, and the stone was rolled in front, and after 3 days he rose again. So this is a very holy place, and I consider myself lucky to have gotten to visit it, and it's a very moving experience. Are there any questions before I move on? Is everyone good? Okay, so here is looking out at the Temple Mount, from the Temple Mount looking out at the Mount of Olives. And so the Mount of Olives it's sort of the reverse of the picture we had before. And there on the far, here, let me see if I can get over there for a little while. This is actually the Church of Dominus Flevit, which I'll explain in a second. And over here is the Church of Pater Noster, which is Latin for Our Father, where Jesus taught the disciples Our Father. In the Bible, that's the church to commemorate that. And down here, this whole white expanse on the side of the hill is just thousands upon thousands of Jewish graves. I really like this picture. As I said, I wasn't that into art, but I like the artisticness of this picture. So this is me silhouetted against the Dome of the Rock on the outside. And this is actually inside the church of Dominus Flevit. And Dominus Flevit is Latin for the Lord wept, which is because this is built over the site where when Jesus was crossing over the Mount of Olives to come down into Jerusalem, he saw the temple and knelt and wept, foreseeing its future destruction. So this is the temple, this is the church built to commemorate that. And I think it's just very powerful symbolism that they just have, it's dark inside and it's looking out straight at the Dome of the Rock, which is the closest approximation to where the Jewish temple actually was. Now we leave the more religious and somber section of Jerusalem and go into the modern bustling center of Jerusalem. This is the markets, also pretty famous, where daily life goes on and all the hustle and bustle and excitement is. Here's me walking through the covered markets. You could, in Europe, you could usually see my blonde hair, but in the Middle East, you could identify me in these pictures even better by this hat. And I'm wearing this hat in most of the pictures, and it's a really cool hat. I really like it. It's too bad I lost it, but it's sort of like a baseball cap, or it was sort of like a baseball cap. So it's sort of like a baseball cap, but it has this guard down your neck that protects you from the sun. So from that, I have deemed it my desert adventure hat, and I perhaps wore it a little bit more than I should. So you can see it in almost every one of these pictures, and that's how you pick me out of the crowd. Apparently, Arabs like corn on the cob too, just like everyone else, except me, with braces.
Pancakes. Pizza.
Pizza. There you can see me on the far end, smiling at the end of the table. And this is actually the Arab approximation of Pizza Hut. It's sort of like a street stall that's selling pizza. So we were just walking through the markets looking for the historical sites, and we found this, which was kind of cool. So we decided to eat here, which may not have necessarily been a good idea because we could have gotten horribly sick, but we didn't, and it was actually not bad pizza, so.
Why would you say you would have gotten sick?
Because our immune systems aren't used to the germs that they have over there, or the viruses,
Oh,
or the bacteria. So sometimes if you eat food there, then you might get sick.
would
Potentially,
that
if you're not
go
used
for
to
if
it.
you ate in a restaurant or something too?
Yeah, if it's a kind of nice westernized restaurant, then
Uh-huh.
they usually clean the food for the tourists who are
Oh.
kind of light-stomached.
They don't
Yeah.
spice it as much.
Pardon me?
I say they don't spice it as much.
Oh.
They
Yeah.
don't put much spices.
Because I know they have a lot of tourists that go there.
Yeah. So anyway, this is one of the more interesting things we found in the market. This is the spice shop. And all they sell in the spice shop is spices. It was another crazy thing for me that it was just they only sell spices. And they clearly make a living. They're still in business. So people in the Middle East are into things that I didn't even know you could be into. I mean, these people are very excited about their spices. You could see he's aggressively selling to those tourists there. And it's really cool to see just the hundreds of varieties. And I grew up thinking that spices came in a little red bottle labeled Tabasco. So it was cool for me to come here and see the culture in a real spice shop. Me with some of the hundreds of varieties, and they have a little Dome of the Rock here right next to the oregano.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh, technical difficulties. I really think this picture defines Jerusalem. This is one of my favorite pictures for Jerusalem. Because although it's not one of the real major monuments or anything famous, it's just of kids playing soccer. So it's not really that important in itself. But behind them, that stone sort of wall structure is actually part of the city of David, which is the oldest and most historically significant part of Jerusalem, arguably. And here in front, kids are just playing soccer. So it didn't seem like much to me at the time, but when I see it now, it really struck me that people live here. People live here every day. They could go to Mass in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or pray at the Western Wall. So I don't want to say it doesn't mean as much to them, because it does, but they're just there every day. So it's kind of cool for me to see that it's not just us Western tourists who are running around and snapping pictures of the monuments and looking at all the cool historical sites, but there are really people who live here every day. The next country in the Middle East we visited is Jordan. And going from Israel to Jordan is like going back in time. It's ridiculous. It's like on the Israeli side they have sort of chic, modern metal and technology and advanced equipment. And then you cross the border into Jordan from the border crossing. And it's like going 30 years or 50 years back in time. There's little grainy black and white televisions and old Arab men puffing cigars. It's really like the old British Empire days, so that was kind of cool to see. And then also, when we get to Jordan, in Israel we had kind of been on a tour bus, so we were with like 20 people on a tour bus, and then there was another tour bus that followed us with another 20 people. So we really didn't see anything by ourselves, except for when we were wandering around Jerusalem by ourselves. But then, when we got to Jordan, there's been a lot of violence in Syria that you've probably heard about lately. And so people are scared to go to Jordan, and they're scared to go to Egypt. So a lot of people come to Israel. And then it turned out that not many of those same people were coming with us to Jordan. So when we get over, it ends up that we meet our guide, and it ends up that we're just driving around Jordan in the back of his car. So it was very interesting and strange at first to be just in the back of his sedan driving up and down Jordan, but it really gave a kind of cool locals perspective. Here's me with my very stylish sunglasses in front of the Dana restaurant. And the Dana restaurant's not really that important in itself, except that they serve Italian food there. And here we are in Jordan, and they have an Italian food restaurant. So this was just like, I was like, what? Are you sure? So it turns out that Jordanians just really love Italian food. So I thought that was very interesting, because it's one of those things that you just couldn't know without going there.
Do they put their own spices in it? Or just go with the Italian spices?
I'm not an expert on Jordanian cooking. I'd tell you if I was.
No, I was just wondering if it's safe to eat if they're in the Italian.
Yeah, I think it is. At least we didn't get horribly sick, so I would presume that it is. So, this is me with my Jordanian friend, and the story behind this picture is that we were sort of touring Karak Castle, which is a castle nearby in northern Jordan. And when we were touring that castle, I had to go to the bathroom, as sometimes happens on our touring. So I say, Dad, I had to go to the bathroom. And so we leave the castle, and we're looking around in town for a bathroom. And we're asking people, and they're trying to help. They're friendly, but they don't speak very good English. So one of them's pointing this way, and one of them's pointing that way, and one of them's waving his arms like this. And we really don't have any idea where we're going. But then we meet this man, and he's like, hey, you could use the bathroom in my shop. So I do, and then we come back out, and we strike up a conversation with him. So then, after a few minutes, he starts to really take a liking to me. So he says, oh, why don't we take a picture? And my dad's like, sure. And I'm like, I'm not sure about that, but I did. So we got this nice picture. and he puts his arm around me, which was a little weird, but we took this nice picture here. But then right after the picture, he turns and he takes me by both shoulders and he kisses me on the forehead. And at this point, I am freaking out. I have no idea what's going on. And I was pretty scared at that point. I'm like, I met this guy like 5 minutes ago, and I just used his shop, the bathroom, and now he's kissing me. But now I actually value that experience because I guess just Jordanian men are just more affectionate than Americans, and they don't hesitate to show it. So it was kind of cool to see that, and I count it as one of my lifetime achievements to have been kissed by a Jordanian man. This is Petra, the very famous monument in Jordan, and this is the most famous part of the city of Petra, the treasury, the magnificent cliff-carved temple tomb. No one's really sure what it is, but it looks very cool. It's huge, and they really did carve it right into the side of that cliff. And so it was kind of cool to see that. But also, how many of you have seen the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Right? Wow, that's actually not that many of you. How many of you at least have heard of Indiana Jones? Okay, that's a lot better. That's a few more. So the point is, at the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones is looking for the Holy Grail. So he's coming down this long valley sort of passage, and then at the very end of it, he comes out and it opens up in front of him, and he sees this magnificent treasury in front of him. And then he goes inside and he meets challenges from God and eventually finds the Holy Grail. Unfortunately, none of that is actually inside. It's just a box room. There are no whirring blades or challenges from God or Holy Grail. But they really did use this historical location to film it at, and that was kind of cool, not only to see the history of this amazing structure, but also that it was in a movie. And it was kind of cool to see the place in real life. Here is that long channel I was talking about before, the Sick, which it's fantastic, it's beautiful in itself, but then when you come out, it's dark in there, and kind of the sides are only like 20 feet apart, and then you come out and it just opens up totally in front of you, and you see the treasury, and it's magnificent to see. It's a really cool visual effect. The third country we visited in the Middle East, and the final country that I will talk about today, is Egypt. You probably all recognize this image. This is one of the more famous. Here is me and my dad in front of the pyramids, the 3 pyramids of Giza. And I learned a lot about the pyramids before I went, and I thought it was really cool to see how old they are. I mean, Egypt is old, for lack of a better term. So these pyramids were built in 2500 BC. That's 4,500 years ago. So these pyramids are so old that they were already 1,000 years old when Moses left Egypt. Here is me and my dad. Here, I'll try to change sides. Here is, it's actually kind of fun to just hop back and forth here. So, anyway, this is me and my dad in front of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. The Pyramid of Khufu. It's spelled like Khufu, but you have to say it with an accent. Khufu. And make little hand gestures like this. Khufu. I'd do it with both hands if I could. So this is the oldest and tallest of the 3 pyramids, which is why it's called the Great Pyramid. This is the Pyramid of Khafra. Pyramid of Khafra. The second oldest pyramid. It actually, I thought it was interesting that it gives the illusion of being taller than the Great Pyramid because it has that intact limestone casing at the top, but it's really not. Here's me and my dad, both with our weather hats that I mentioned before, entering the side of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. If you can get your knees into it, that's also good too, Khufu. But the point is, we were going in here, and we it's very cool inside a pyramid, actually. Like, even the other day when I was here giving out flyers, I got a chance to meet some of you, and someone actually asked me what's inside a pyramid. And so I didn't know myself until I started researching before we went. And so, does anybody know what a pyramid actually is? Could anybody tell us? Yes, you're right, a tomb. It's a tomb for the pharaohs, which are the kings of Egypt in the ancient times. So, inside, you go in this little door, and this is actually a thieves' entrance. This is not the original main entrance. But you go inside, and there's this long ascending tunnel. And at the very end, well, there's a descending tunnel, and then there's an ascending tunnel. And at the very end of it, there's this big room. It's the pharaoh's burial chamber. And it's now completely empty, and it's just blank stone walls. But you could imagine that it must have been grand in its time, and it's really cool to be where the pharaoh was. Here is me and my dad trying to unsuccessfully keep our eyes open in the Egyptian sun. And the Sphinx, the third person who agreed to take a picture with us. The cat, lion, pharaoh creature that no one really knows the true purpose of, the giant statue in front of the pyramids, and the pyramid of Khafra in the back. This is me getting on a camel. So, I'm getting on the camel, and I originally, we didn't really want to ride a camel, and because there was really no point in it that I saw. It was just kind of like, hey, it's a big furry animal, where's the history? So, but it was included in our tour, so that was really the only reason we did. And so we come and get on the camel, and here I am at the most dangerous part of getting on a camel, which is getting on. And the reason for that is because when the camel gets up, it first stands up with its back legs, and you fly forward, and then it stands with its front legs, and you fly back. And they're also very tall, so if you fall, there's a long way to the ground. But if you hang on for dear life through all of that, it's actually a really cool experience. They're really high, and you can see sort of all over, and they kind of bob back and forth. And we were trying to sit on it Lawrence of Arabia style, with the legs crossed on one side. And then, so it ended up being really cool, and we got some great pictures. I never get tired of looking at this picture. All three pyramids, me, and a camel. So here's me with my our Egyptologist guide Marwa. And so I told you how in Israel we were on a tour bus, and in Jordan we were in the back of a guy's car. And then it gets so bad with tourists not wanting to go in Egypt that actually the other few people who were going to come actually canceled. So, because they were kind of scared about the revolution that happened in Egypt recently. So we went, and then it ended up that everyone else had canceled. So when we get there, it ends up that we have a driver, a coordinator, and an Egyptologist guide that just help us tour Egypt, which was actually really cool. I mean, mostly the Egyptologist guide, because it really did improve our experience in Egypt. And I had some great conversations with our Egyptologist guide here, because before we had gone to the Middle East, I had actually spent around 6 months outside of school studying the history and the culture of the place so that I could know it better before I went and know what I was seeing when I was there. So then it was really cool to get here and talk to a real Egyptologist about Egyptian history in the actual places. So I had some great conversations with her, and she ended up being my favorite Middle East guide. Have I been clear on anything? Is there anything you want to know?
Very clear.
Excellent.
Very interesting. Enjoy.
Even more excellent. So anyway, Cairo is busy. Cairo is the capital of Egypt, and a third of Egyptian population lives there, I believe. So if I thought it was busy in Rome, I was in for a surprise in Cairo. The streets are always clogged, and if you can believe it, they actually don't have street lights in Cairo. Somehow they managed to get on without street lights, so in the intersections it's just kind of, you go when you can go or else it's gridlock. But the system seems to work for them, so it worked for us. And so here you can see the crowds of people on the street and the cars trying to get through. Pretty characteristic. Getting to the pyramids, almost as much of an adrenaline rush as seeing them. That bus appears to be trying to turn into oncoming traffic. I haven't taken driver's ed yet, but I'm pretty sure that that's a bad idea. Donkey cart, a common mode of transportation. I really like this picture. I say I really like the picture a lot, but I really, really like this picture. So if you guys remember nothing from Egypt besides the pyramids and this, I will be happy. So this is inside the Djoser's necropolis, which is where the oldest pyramid in the world, and actually the largest cut stone structure in the world, or the first pyramid and the first cut stone structure in the world are located, which again, unfortunately, I didn't have time for. But here is me, and this is inside Djoser's necropolis. So the reason this is so cool is because these behind me, going off into the sunlight, are actually the first 40 stone columns ever erected on Earth. They're the first 40 stone columns that anyone put up anywhere in the history of mankind. So I thought that was just fascinating. And I really thought it was mind-boggling to think that people had to invent things that seem as intuitive to us as columns. So this was their experiment. These were the first columns, and we owe a debt of gratitude to whoever made these, because there's probably columns here in this building right now. And so I ran up and down and counted them to make sure there were 40, and there are, so. The next city we went down to is Luxor. And we spent 3 days in Egypt, so we went Cairo, Luxor, Cairo. And so in Luxor, the main attraction is the Valley of the Kings. So up here is the Valley of the Kings. And after a while, the pyramids had been around for a while when the pharaohs moved their capital from up by Cairo to down here. It was called Thebes, and it's now called Luxor. But by the time they had moved it down here, the pyramids had been around for a while, and they had figured out that pyramids were just giant beacons for grave robbers. And they were all getting robbed, and the pharaohs' bodies were being desecrated, and all the treasures were being stolen, and didn't go with them to the afterlife. So I think it's interesting what they decided to do to combat that. So they actually decided to hide their tombs. And that's the story of the Valley of the Kings. So if you go up that valley there, like that, they've actually dug shafts and tunnels into the sides of the mountains, which they covered in paintings and hieroglyphs and treasures. So unfortunately I couldn't get any pictures of the tombs themselves because it's another no photo zone. But it really is fantastic outside, inside, with the hieroglyphs and the paintings and the history. And also we went inside the tomb of King Tutankhamun, better known as King Tut, which was very famous a few years ago. Here is me and my Luxor guide in front of the Nile River.
Did I kiss you in the head?
No, he didn't actually. So here we are in front of an obelisk. We're actually, right now we're in front of the Temple of Karnak, one of my other favorite place in Luxor besides the Valley of the Kings. And so, here we are in front of Karnak, and this is actually an obelisk pedestal where an obelisk once stood. And you can see how big it is to just give scale to the obelisks. It's like 3 of us to even get to the top, or of me at least, to get to the top of that. And that's only the base. But the thing that's important about this particular obelisk base is this is actually the base for the obelisk that's now in the Place de la Concorde in Paris. So you remember when I told you all to remember that at the beginning of my talk, this is what it was for. So we took these trips a year apart. We went to Europe, and then a year later we went to the Middle East. So we weren't seeing these at the same time. So then it was really amazing for me to see the connection between these two places across time from our two trips. The obelisk used to be here, and now it's there. So that was one of my, I really liked that. Here's me in the back of Karnak Temple. I'm holding out our little map to show where we are. And I was actually out there looking for the obelisk pedestal for the obelisk that's now in the church of San Giovanni in Laterano in Rome to see another former obelisk that's now in Europe. And unfortunately, we ran out of time and I couldn't find it. So if any of you guys ever go to Egypt and you find this, you had to tell me, okay? I will find it one time, someday. Here is me with one of the wonderful Karnak Temple soldier guards. And the interesting thing about Karnak Temple guards is that they don't really guard anything. As soon as they're assigned to a post, they kind of open up their own ticket office and allow people in for bakshish, which is essentially the Egyptian version of tipping, and that's accepted. So I hope you don't mind if I use the word bribery, but that's kind of what it seemed like to me at first. But then, eventually I realized that, hey, this could actually be beneficial to us. And so for $1, we could get a soldier to show us the interesting sights and let us into cool historical places. And here I am taking a picture with one of the guards for $1, and he has his arm around me again. He did not kiss me on the head. That was the only guy in Jordan. So anyway, this picture, he's my friend, the guard, who helped show me around Karnak. And this picture is made much more poignant when you see the machine gun he has slung over his back. But unfortunately, it didn't come out in this particular photo. So when we went back to Cairo for our final day in the Middle East, we went back to the pyramids one more time at sunset on the second day and saw them again, which was pretty cool. Just kidding. This is a poster on the wall of the Luxor airport. Looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, our final day in Cairo and in the Middle East, we had seen most of the ancient Egyptian sites. So our guide, Marwa, who's still with us, advised us to tour the city of Cairo. So we did. And this behind me is the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, not the boxer, but Muhammad Ali, the Pasha of Egypt at one time. And I really like this mosque because I really like the aesthetic quality with all the domes and the minarets, and I like looking at it.
Oh, is that pretty?
Yeah, it is. Here's me inside the Mosque of Muhammad Ali. They don't mind if you go inside, and it's an active mosque where worship is going on, and you have to take off your shoes at the entrance out of respect, so I'm barefoot here. So we went inside this wonderful domed structure. You could see the outline of domes up there. Went barefoot, and we sit down with our guide Marwa, who I showed you before, and she just says, ask me whatever you want about Islam. Ask me anything you've ever wanted to know. So we do, and we end up having a great conversation with her about Islam, and we learned a lot. And so it was cool to have a conversation about Islam with a Muslim in a functioning mosque in an Islamic city, in an Islamic country in the Middle East, and that's one of the experiences I remember the best from Egypt.
Is that a popular place? There doesn't seem to be too many people there. Visiting.
It's not prayer time, so
Oh.
it's not a tourist location really.
Oh, okay.
It's really cool though. I like it. So here is me. We really did return to the pyramids at sunset this time. These are real. So here's me in front of the pyramids, and we returned there. This was our very last day, and we were going to leave the next day and fly back to Chicago. So we wanted to end with a good experience. So we went back to the pyramids to see the sound and light show. So when it got dark, they would actually project images and sounds onto the side of the pyramids and use the stone side of the pyramid like as a giant projector, just like I'm using this now. And that was really cool to see, and even better, it gave an excuse to go back and visit the pyramids one more time, which is always worth it.
What's that light up there in the sky?
I would assume that is a star or an airplane or something of that nature. And then finally, we had to fly back to America for now. And we came back with a lot of great memories and a determination to share them with the community. Thank you.
That was very interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Questions?
Any questions? Does anyone have questions?
So where are you going next?
No idea. It's a wonderful world out there, and it's also a big world, and there's lots of places to choose from.
Wonderful.
How old is the, cafe that was that Paris?
Yeah, Café Procope was founded in 1686.
That's a long time.
Yeah, so quite a long time.
I hope they remodeled since then.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I imagine that they've had it inspected since then.
You, I'm asking you.
Any other questions?
How long was your tour?
2 weeks in Europe, which was the first trip, and then the next year we had 2 weeks in the Middle East. And this was during the summer, so I didn't miss school.
Where are you going next?
Someone up here already asked that. I don't know.
How about your father? Does he know?
No, he doesn't know. It's a collaborative decision-making process. We talk about it together and decide where we go.
Okay.
All right, so I'm here to answer more questions if you want. Does anyone have one?
Have you shown this at school?
I have not, actually. I might pretty soon in my religion class. I go to a Catholic school, so I might in my religion class as pretty soon, but so far it's only you guys and the Lombard Senior Men's Club.
I think in your religion class they'd really like that part about Jerusalem.
I imagine they would. There's
Yes.
plenty of other holy sites that I
Right.
didn't have time to fit into here.
Yeah.
All right, so who else? Questions?
Is that a German airline? Lufthansa?
Lufthansa, yeah.
You came back there, did you?
We actually
How-
went through Frankfurt. So you heard me mention Germany at the beginning,
Yes.
and it's possible that I didn't really go to Germany and I kind of flew through there in order to get to America, but I still added on the list because it's better to have 7 than 6. It's more factual. So I did see the German airport, and it was very interesting in there actually.
I'd like to know what you plan for the future of your life, what kind of education you're going to go into.
Oh, that's the best question. She asked what I plan to do with the future of my life, with a career. And I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. But I do have some very diverse and varied ambitions, such as becoming Batman, or becoming the president.
How about a priest?
That's not really on the list.
Do you speak any language?
I don't, actually. It's weird for my chosen hobby, but I speak a little bit of Spanish. I'm in Spanish 1, so that's it. So, well, I also don't have a great sense of direction, which is kind of weird too, for the East Hemisphere and the West Hemisphere. I may have gotten this wrong, which is also weird for traveling.
What was your first trip to Europe? Where was that?
That was in 2011, in the summer of 2000. That was in the summer of 2011. Yeah, And Middle East was the summer of 2012, so like 6 months ago.
Obviously, your family's been a big inspiration to you.
Yes, very much. And some of them are here. You could talk to them if you want.
Are you an only child?
I am, actually. It's very nice. You guys should all try it.
Kind of late in the game for that.
You should ask the lady on the front row.
If you were to choose a language while you're in high school, what would it be?
I am in high school and I'm taking Spanish right now. I'm in Spanish 1, and I will probably continue that all the way through until my language requirement is met. And my only real Spanish experience so far is talking to the women at Chipotle, who I'm very much friends with. And I have conversations a lot of times with them there at the Mexican restaurant. I go to Bennett Academy in Lisle. It's a Catholic school. You guys know where Lisle is?
Yeah.
I don't, so I hope you guys do. It's somewhere one of those
You don't
directions.
where you go there. You must know where it is.
It's in Lisle, I know that. Lisle is just a name for me. I don't know where it
How do you
is.
get there?
Not until they drive.
I don't drive myself, so
But
I am driven. The drivers usually know
Oh, okay.
where Bennett Academy is, so.
you know, I think if you would be lecturing in your schools, you'd be inspiring a lot of young people to get involved with travel and learning what's happening out in this world. Because they don't teach civics and they don't teach too many things about our world situations in schools.
I agree. I think they should teach a little more history and
Definitely.
politics.
Definitely.
And I have a lot of fun in my world history class, though, as you could probably all imagine. I'm working on driving my teacher crazy before the end of the year, so
I think you will. I think you're a challenge to him.
yes, I have a lot of fun with him. I've actually won $3 from him so far. But that's unofficial. Don't repeat that outside of this room.
Pretty soon it'll be on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
When you talked about the 6 different religions in that one place, what were the 6 different religions?
Let me see if I can remember. There's 6 different types of Christianity, so they're all Christians.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. They're different denominations of Christianity. And so they have Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Coptic, Syrian, another one. There's 6.
Okay.
Greek Orthodox, and then maybe there's Armenian. Yeah, Armenian. That's the 6th one, or the 5th one.
So where did you get that spark of interest in this nature? Did your father stimulate?
Yes, definitely.
Your father?
My dad has. We talk a lot about history and
So he
various things,
He
so.
started interesting you at an early age,
yeah. So he's.
Okay.
as you would have been with Batman. You are with history.
I am both with Batman and history, actually. They're mutual interests.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yes. You mean Batman?
Both.
Yes, definitely. It's good to have balance between Batman and history.
You look more like a Robin to me than a
Yeah, because Robin just has complete blonde hair and is about 5 feet tall.
Okay.
Okay, you're all welcome. Are there any more questions?
No, thank
You guys
very
can leave
much.
if you want. If you guys are getting tired, but if you have more questions, I'd be happy to.
I would like to thank once more to Michael McGerty again for choosing Lexington Square to do his presentation. Thank you so much. And thank you to your father too. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that would be good.
Yeah, as they came in.
Or are we in the way here?
I don't think we'll be invited.
You got me.